Ooh, are we live? We are indeed. What up, what up, what up? Yo, oh, Destroying just posted a new video. So, there's a lot of shit that's happened. Oh, they started posting videos from Diamond Co. There's a lot of shit that happened in football that I have to save until Friday because, quite frankly, it's probably gonna get a lot worse. It's gonna get worse. So I don't even need to waste my time talking about it right now. We're going to talk about everything that happened in Week 14, some key stuff that happened. We got the nuke that's back, if you're here live for the stream at the beginning, or if you're watching the replay. We're going to try and get through it as quickly as possible so you don't have to spend all this time watching me do social media shit. Other than that, let's get it popping. Let's go. Apparently, wow, we got 2 more subscribers. That's wild. Shout out to new people. I didn't, so you don't have to spend all this. Wow. Like thoroughly shocked. Every time we get a new subscriber, I'm shocked on YouTube. But shout out to people who are willing to watch me talk in a screen, basically, who find it entertaining in some way, shape, or form. I appreciate that. We need to go to Twitter. Got some stuff to talk about. If you're wondering why the show is happening so late on a Wednesday, it's because I was watching the challenge season finale. Well, not the season finale, but the one where they announced the winner of the challenge. Well, not announce it, but the winner is declared because they showed the episodes. So, yeah, shout out. Great season. If you don't watch the challenge on a regular basis, this season was really good. You can literally start at any given point and you'll kind of get all the dynamics and shit like that. I would say it's worth it, in my personal opinion. That's just me, though. I would say it's dope. You should definitely check it out. What else we gonna do? I got a lot of YouTube videos that popped up on my feed right when I went live that I'm super pumped to watch. Let's see. Sorry. Trying to get on Twitch real quick, make sure I get everything set up. We just did a sound check, so we're good on that. We should also be good here in a second. I'm gonna watch my stream, and then I need to send a tweet out about how you should come watch the stream. Actually, I'm supposed to send it out from my phone because I already have it saved. So, if you ever want a tip that's gonna make your life a lot easier, pre-format a tweet that has all 3 of the links to watch and listen to your show live. And then just copy and paste it into whatever social media app you're using. It helps me a ton. It helps me retroactively because there's a lot of people who actually find my show after. There's a lot of people who go back and watch it retroactively, is what I'll say. And when I say a lot of people, I mean relative to the number of people who just watch my show in general. I wouldn't say it's a lot of people. But yeah, I got to watch the challenge season finale with my friend Emily. Which is really dope. Shout out to the internet. Shout out to technology. Listen and watch live. Yep, and just got that text message about where Christmas is taking place. It's going to be lit, guys. It's going to be dope. Don't worry about it. See, there's a new audio thing going around on TikTok as there is every single week. I've been trying to post TikToks on a regular basis, but I've been doing a bad job. I'm not even gonna lie. I started off pretty strong, and then life caught me. I'm not even gonna lie, guys. I apologize. Hashtags. Sorry, I'm trying to find a good chunk of hashtags to use here. Also, if you're also smart and you want to get into shit like sports wise, I would suggest my number one suggestion would be to, for you to copy and paste all of the hashtags for each team into your phone, because that's what I do, and then I go through and I just kind of pick and choose which ones I want to put on there. Kind of customize it a little bit, makes it easier. And then make sure you got the accurate ones, because sometimes they change them from year to year. But hey, that's not your problem. You know what I mean? NFL Twitter. Did I put NFL #NFL still in there? It is, but for some reason, yeah, I did not know people were listening to the show like that. Like, I was thoroughly surprised we got another subscriber. That means that somebody's out there listening. Hopefully it's not just one of my friends. But if it is my friend, shout out to my friends for listening. But, you know, the objective of the show is to find new people to listen. But I'll take what I can get. One step closer to getting that $100 million contract. If you got questions, hot takes, anything you want to talk about on the show, suggestions for topics, put it in the chat. And I actually will completely divert from what I'm talking about to address what you're saying. Because I crave interaction from people who are sports fans. I'll tell you a terrible story that happened to me personally. Hold on. As soon as I post this. And also, as soon as I start the podcast, I'll tell you an absolutely horrendous story. Not even lying, dude. It centers around. This is why you should never. For those of you who are initiated into the world of sports, and you guys know, if you know, you know, right? If you're initiated, you know. Suggestion to you personally, something that it took me a while to think about and to address. Never, like, you don't have to respond to the person who doesn't know what they're talking about. You don't have to respond to the person who just wants to talk to you for the sake of an argument. I get it. Some people enjoy it. I don't. I get wrapped up in trying to diffuse the logic of idiots way too often in my life. And of course, like, defusing the logic of people who are emotional as well, because I can be one of those people, right? But nonetheless, you don't have to address the idiot in the room. Especially if there's other people who know what they're talking about that are also in the room. You don't have to address the idiot in the room. I promise you, you don't. That's a life lesson for this week. And I'll give you the story that goes with it. As soon as my phone stops acting weird. There we go. Oh my god, this is so ridiculous. The Notes app on Android is, like, actually terrible for saving shit. Copy? It's terrible for copying and pasting things. And I'll tell you that elaborate story some other time. But as of right now, we're gonna talk about football shit. You know, we're gonna talk about football. Pelicans beat the Thunder 1-3. That's not football. I'm sorry. I addressed the existence of the NBA, which is, of course, sacrilege within the realm of sports right now. We're dropping frames. Odin's beard. And it's happening every 2 minutes. Why is that the case? Anyway. While she's on Christmas break. Anyway, so Christmas is coming up, and I need to do some of the bullshitty, like, attention grabbing stuff. Wow. Oh no, somebody I know did the beep test. Jesus Christ. If there was ever one thing I would tell you, like, when you hear at a practice that we're going to do some light conditioning. First of all, the term light conditioning has never existed within the realm of sports. No such thing as light conditioning. It's conditioning where, like, you know, it's trying to get you to the point where it hurts a lot. Anyway, what else we got? Oh, right, we need to start the podcast, the actual podcast itself. We'll see how this goes. Last week, if you recall, it actually shut down my microphone. So let's see if Spreaker's going to be cool today. It is. Do sound check. Sound check's perfect. Time to get it popping, ladies and gents, here in a couple seconds. And I did not forget to tell you that story about why you don't have to address the idiot in the room. Boy Sports Podcast, episode 170, by the way, guys. 170. Shout out to everybody who's been here along with the ride. The rough ride that it has been for this podcast, I will admit. NFL Week 14 recap. Let's see if I can find that tweet of the NFL schedule. NFL results. Oh, let me check the chat, see if anybody hopped in there. Oh, let me check on Twitch as well. My bad. Shout out to all the Twitch peeps as well. Oh, shit. Almost dropped my phone. It's already got 2 cracks on it already, so can't be much worse. I'm kidding. It could be a lot worse. What else we got? We are also... Oh, yeah, we're looking for the NFL schedule. You're right. Week 14 schedule. Ooh, not schedule. Results is what I meant. We bought some Wild Turkey 151, by the way, because we're preparing for a drinking contest next week. Yep, I said it. You heard it. You heard it right. Drinking contest the day after Thanksgiving. If you hear about the murder of one of my friends, no, you didn't. I have a friend who is unbeatable at drinking contest, and every year we get to challenge him one time, and I've decided that the day after Christmas is going to be the day that I challenge him. So, man, NOC. Oh shit! What did I just erase? No, not that, dude. I'm clicking a certain place. Please go there. You're a cursor. Go to where I click, and we'll be fine. Do not do that. Sorry, I'm trying to fix a description for the podcast so some Fox News shit doesn't get populated with it. Wow, this is wild. Anyway. All right. Ooh, we need to back it up even further. Let's go. Whew. It's tedious being an elite content creator like myself. Person who monetizes nothing and makes nothing. But hey, we're going to get there. Oh, shit. Whatever, I'll take that. Everything, all the other descriptions out of there. Yeah. Somehow I copied and pasted something that didn't get copied and pasted, which is weird. Does Control Z work? Yeah. The formatting on this thing, man. Like, Jesus. There's your ASMR for clicking. I don't have a mechanical keyboard. Sorry, guys. I don't have the real porn that people are here for. The real ASMR porn that people are really here for. Let's go. All right, we're less than a minute away from getting started here. We already sent out the tweets. We did what we could. Hopefully people will hop in. If not, oh well. I can't wait for the day that this podcast is so popular that I don't have to tell people when it's happening. But, you know, that day isn't here yet. Until then, I'll be going hard in the paint. And when I say the paint, I mean the Twitter streets. Podcast. All right, let's do it. Going live in 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, and I'm the Broke Boy Extraordinaire, actually currently unemployed as of right now, so in my purest form is how you're witnessing me right now. It is our NFL recap episode, and I'm still recovering from bronchitis, which we came to learn is not COVID, so shout out, keeping the streak alive. About to be 2 years once, March rolls around again, so we're rolling strong through the COVID-19 pandemic. Got to get that booster shot. One thing I have been forgetting to go and do because it's going to take me out for an entire day. And right now, as an unemployed fellow, I find myself busier than ever. Between this podcast, doing side gigs to try and make money to be able to live and survive and stuff like that, plus hanging out with my friends because this is the time of the year where I make up for all the times that I don't see my friends throughout the year when they go out to like bars. Like for instance, 2 weeks ago, one of my friends had a birthday party. I couldn't make it because of Quidditch, right? That happens. But this is the time of the year where I make time and I go out of my way to make sure that I am being a high quality friend at this time of the year so that, we remain friends, essentially. That's very important to me, remaining friends with my friends. But other than that, oh man, it's been a good week. It was a good week in football, like last week. I watched a lot of high quality stuff. I watched a lot of cool stuff happen. And as you guys know, on this podcast, my number one objective is just to see cool stuff at all times, or see as much cool stuff as possible. I have rewatched every game of Week 14 that I didn't watch. Even the games that I did watch, I rewatched them again. Don't ask me how. If you do really want to know how you can, if you really want to know how I rewatch games for free, hit me up on social media at Twitter at FB_playbook. Hit me up on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast Twitter account at Broke Boy Pod. Hit me up on my personal Twitter account at The Ashton J. Or you can hit me up on my Instagram account that also has the same name as my TikTok account at The Ashton Forever. You can, you can't reach me on Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that. I guess you could write it in the comments and I could answer in the comments. But don't forget, we are simulcasting live on YouTube and on Twitch. I don't know why we're doing that. I'm just trying to make the show as accessible as possible. But nonetheless, we're streaming and we're recording simultaneously for audio later on, so you can listen to the show on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Deezer. What else Google Podcasts. That's what I listen to my podcast on, by the way. Google Podcasts. Other than that, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, man. There are 4 weeks left in the NFL season, and damn near every team is still in it except the Houston Texans and like 2 other teams. They're vying for a playoff spot of some sort, in some shape, form, or fashion in these last 4 games of the season. Expanding out the playoff field definitely helped with that, and then combine that with the fact that there's a lot of teams who have actually drafted high quality football players that have worked really well in their system. For the first time in 10 years, the Bengals are a legitimate playoff contender. The last time they were a playoff contender, the Texans will stomp them for the 3rd time in the first round of the playoffs in wild card weekend, I believe. Anyway, but yeah, there are some teams, and I say almost every team is in the mix for a playoff spot. Obviously, that is taking into factor the teams that need basically a miracle from the football gods. So they better start sacrificing lambs or virgins or whatever it takes to get this done first and foremost up front. And then they also have a ton of teams that are really, they got to keep doing what they're doing. And you know what the best part about that is? The teams that got to keep doing what they're doing, and the teams that need to sacrifice the blood of multiple lambs and possibly virgins, they're going to face absolute hell these last 4 weeks of the season. Absolute chaos is going to happen. The teams that need to keep doing what they're going to do, it's not going to happen for them. It's absolute chaos will unfold itself in front of us, and there's going to be a team that you're sitting back there and you're like, wow, even with the expanded playoff field, you're going to think that there's a team that deserves to make the playoffs. Is that for me to determine? No. And if that team is your team, then I'm not really trying to hear it. But if there's a lot of high quality football teams, or teams that are what I would consider playoff caliber teams when it's all said and done. And as you guys know, I think we talked about it on the show before, the football season is not the regular season and the playoffs don't determine what the best player is, right? Like, they don't determine what the best team is in the NFL. Like, they don't. The regular season determines who the best team in the NFL is. Technically, the playoffs do not. They determine who the best team is in a tournament format, and that means that anybody's capable of winning. Which means that you would think that the more teams you add in, the more volatile the result is going to be. We'll find out. I guess time will tell. But nonetheless, there's a lot of teams out there who are competing for a playoff spot that might not be available for them a little bit later on in the season. But hey, who am I to judge who is not a playoff team? One thing I will point out, I'm gonna watch every single second of that shit. Every single second coming down to the wire, and I can't wait to watch it. 4 weeks left. No more buys. No more people chilling out to the sideline. You know, COVID's running rampant through the league right now. We're going to talk about that on Friday. We're not going to talk about stuff that's happened this week. We're here to recap what happened in Week 14 and all the stuff that was important. And speaking of recapping what happened in Week 14, we need to hand out something that I didn't do the last time we did a recap episode, but is vastly important to the ecosystem of football as a whole. And it is the most important award that we personally give out on this show. It's called the Nuke, and it is a award indicating the player that basically won you your matchup. An award indicating a player that if you played against them, you had no shot to begin with, and you shouldn't even feel bad about it, baby. Especially at this point during the season, some of y'all are in your playoffs, or some of y'all are coming up on your regular, or some of y'all are coming up on that close of your regular season. So you getting burned by some random player who went off for literally career highs in multiple categories. That's a tough way to go out, baby, but that's the name of the game. Anyway, this week's Nuke from the Seattle Seahawks themselves, from Emerald City, as people like to say, career highs in carries, career highs in rushing yards, career high in rushing touchdowns in a single game. This beautiful image of Rashad Penny via Daring Sharp. You should check him out on Pinterest and also daringsharp.com. Rashad Penny, ladies and gentlemen, is the Nuke for this week, or for Week 14 of the NFL season. Absolutely dominated versus the Houston Texans. Took a lot of pressure off of Russell Wilson, who's really, like, let's be for real, is still struggling. Still not looking good. He had one of those beautiful absolute bombs to Tyler Lockett, and that was the first semblance of the old Russell Wilson we've seen in quite some time. I will say, a lot of people have pointed out how the timeline for the recovery of his hand just so happens to match up with the increased effectiveness of his ability to throw the ball down the field, almost like Russell Wilson, who was deemed to be magically healing or whatever, really didn't magically heal. He just came back early. Like, his hand had the bone inside of it instead of on the outside of it. And they were like, cool. He was like, cool, I'm healed up. I can go back out there and throw. And now that he's got his full hand to his disposal to throw the ball, he's a lot more accurate. He looks like the borderline MVP quarterback that he looks like every single time he touches the field, which can only be good things for the Seattle Seahawks in the back half of this season. They're facing an uphill battle as they try and vie for one of the few playoff spots that are left. And as we mentioned before, you can make an argument for, we mentioned throughout the course of this year, the NFC West has basically got 4 playoff teams in it, and one or two of those teams is going to get left out. More than likely, 2 of those teams are going to get left out. So we'll see what happens when it all shakes out. The 49ers are heating up. The Seattle Seahawks kind of heating up a little bit. They were heating up a little, like a week or two too late, but we'll see if they still have some time left with 4 games left. It's highly unlikely, but hope springs eternal, especially when you're talking about professional football. You've seen the Arizona Cardinals, who look like the preeminent Super Bowl contender based off what we've seen in the past, and then the San Francisco 49ers, the LA Rams, a team that looked like a Super Bowl contender a couple of weeks ago, well, really a month ago, and it's really kind of hit their stock in the public opinion has really hit a speed bump, but doesn't mean that they can't bounce back, because at the end of the day, public opinion doesn't determine who wins and loses games, right? Anyway, shout out to Rashad Penny. And I'll explain the Seattle Seahawks situation. They had 4 names that could have been starting at running back for him this week. Adrian Peterson, yes, that Adrian Peterson, one of the greatest running backs of all time, who last week was able to get a rushing touchdown despite only having 16 rushing yards to surpass Jim Brown, the legend Jim Brown, in terms of total rushing touchdowns, along with Alex Collins, who has been the guy that the team has depended upon and leaned upon the entire course of the season, because they've been waiting for a lot of other people to not be hurt. But Alex Collins, Adrian Peterson, Travis Homer, who last week had 2 touchdowns. One was on special teams off of a fake punt sneak that went for like 72 yards or something like that for a touchdown. Then he also had a killer rushing touchdown as well to go along with it. And the other one, the guy who's over, sorry, I pointed the wrong way. The guy who's over here is Rashad Penny. He was the least likely, if you were going to say, to start the week off in terms of the guy that you think is going to be the starting running back, and he ended up being the dude that carried the squad, and then on top of that carried a lot of fantasy quote-unquote owners to a couple of wins, including myself. I'm up after week 1 of a 2-week NFL fantasy season, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, time marches on, so does this show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, ladies and gents. We got a lot of games to recap. I promise you, I will not be wasting your time on the blowouts, mainly because I don't have time to waste breaking down. I rewatched all the games, and some of them weren't even worth writing notes about, but we'll still talk about it anyway, out of respect to the game. Don't forget, this past week, the bye weeks were the Colts, the Dolphins, the Eagles, and the Patriots. Let's be for real. Dolphins kind of overachieving, despite the fact that they look like a borderline playoff team last year. Like we mentioned before, Tua looking pretty good, basically putting the front office for the Dolphins in a bad spot here, right? With the upcoming draft pick that they're going to have, because it looks like the Dolphins are not going to make the playoffs when it's all said and done, but we'll see what happens. The Eagles looking like a borderline playoff team. They come off of a big win led by none other than Gardner Minshew himself, the king of jorts. Himself on that one, and then before that they saw a lot of progress from Jalen Hurts at the starting quarterback position. So moving on, we also got the Colts playoff team, borderline playoff team, wildcard team more than likely, unless something absolutely insane happens with the Tennessee Titans, and I think they actually clinched beating the Jags this past week. Oh, sorry, did I spoil one of the shutouts this week? I'm sorry. The Patriots also looking like a playoff team, especially after the way. Well, they got another game versus the Bills later on this season, but after that Monday Night Football game versus the Bills, they look like they might be back to winning the AFC East again, much to the chagrin of all the money that has been spent to build the Buffalo Bills into a superpower. Anyway, we go back to Thursday Night Football, way back in the time machine. Thursday Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what quite frankly was shaping up to be one of the saddest games of the entire week. Little did we know, there's a couple of teams that were like, hold my beer, bro, right? At least for the first start of the game here, I think it was like 26-0 going into halftime, and then of course the final score in this one was 36-28. A couple of things to take out of this: Dalvin Cook, still that dude. Dalvin Cook still cooking fools, right? Ben Roethlisberger, he's got a little, like they say, there's a little magic left in that top hat when they're talking about Frosty the Snowman. A little magic left in that arm from Ben Roethlisberger, because on that game-winning drive, they very well should have won this game. The final drive of this game resulted in the Steelers being able to get a situation where Pat Freiermuth had a catchable ball that was kind of thrown on a laser in coverage where 3 people were colliding on him, and he just dropped it on the back end of the catch possibly, and it would have been a game-winning touchdown to beat the Minnesota Vikings, which would have basically killed their playoff hopes, which for a team that's had this many one-possession losses this season, them getting a one-possession win over the Steelers, still not very impressive for some reason. Who knows why? Kirk Cousins kind of gave it up in the second half. He had 2 second-half turnovers. They were interceptions. The Pittsburgh Steelers capitalized on top of those. And then on top of that, sorry, still recovering from bronchitis. The Steelers had one of those situations where they scored on every drive except one, which was the third to last drive. No. They scored on every drive except 2. The game-winning drive, and then they scored 2 touchdowns before the game-winning drive, and then they missed on the first drive that they had, or the 4th drive that they had before that. Anyway, other than that, Steelers look really good in the second half of the game. Vikings look great in the first half. Turns out, you only really need to look good for a little bit. You need to look good for 2 quarters and maybe half of one, and you can win games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt currently did not finish this game, by the way, because of a groin injury. Najee Harris still getting way too many touches of the football. Not that he's not good, but it can be good for his career overall when he has that many touches of the football. Just a theory. Anyway, Cowboys, Washington. Yeah, we're going to start off with a stinker here. Final score is 27-20. Deceptive's final score. If you did not watch this one, the Cowboys defense basically took their foot and shoved it up the ass of the Washington no-names. So they the entire game. Turnovers galore. There were multiple strip sacks. There was also Taylor Heineke doing Taylor Heineke things where he threw the ball to the other team. There was a situation with some benches that were imported by Jerry Jones to make sure that his team was properly taken care of. And considering the fact that earlier this season, the Washington football team had literal sewage leaking from the club level deck onto fans, understandable why you would want to bring your own seating. So there's that. Not going to talk about the Dan Snyder stuff. Going to save that for Friday's show. When we talk about sports overall, Dan Snyder, like I said before, and I'll say it again. You see Dan Snyder in the streets, you tell him I'm looking for him, right? Big thing to take out of this, defense literally carried the day here. The offense for the Cowboys has just been terrible the last month and a half of the season. That's even after, once again, I think the best offensive performance they've had in the past month and a half was from Cooper Rush on offense. But nonetheless, the Cowboys looked rough. Dak Prescott had a bad day throwing the ball. Let's just say it like that. The Washington defense looks like they finally rounded into form a little bit for a team that literally started off the season where multiple players were confused as to what defensive call was being called out at the beginning of the season to now being one of the better defenses in the NFL, able to hold a team that literally had their offense coughing up the ball inside their own red zone to 27 points. That's pretty impressive. And then on top of that, forcing turnovers of their own, Washington's defense is looking really good, especially considering they're a team that has lost every major name that they had on their defensive line, which is what they hung their hat on. But yeah, the Cowboys went out there and took care of business. The score was actually not close at all. The Washington football team kind of came back in the back half of the game and never really legitimately had a shot. Speaking of never had a shot, the Tennessee Titans beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-0. And, of course, the story has been about all the shit that Urban Meyer's been up to. The situation where Urban Meyer apparently called everybody on the coaching staff a loser, forced them to explain the legitimacy of their resumes as football coaches. Now there's a story about how he kicked Josh Lambo in August, Josh Lambo being the kicker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere about how Josh Lambo missed his return kick against Urban Meyer. I'm very intrigued as to how Urban Meyer has not gotten into an actual fist fight with an NFL player. Also would like to point out there's apparently a shouting match between him and Marvin Jones Jr. And, I'm sure everybody who keeps calling for Urban Meyer to get fired, I just want to point this one thing out. The punishment is that he has to continue to coach the Jags. Once you start thinking about it like that, then it all starts to make sense. Because he wants you to fire him. Don't give him what he wants. Anyway, the Seahawks took on the Houston Texans. This is the meeting of my two favorite teams. I almost went to the Seahawks tailgate. I'm not even going to lie. But I did have two white elephant / friends Christmas parties the Saturday beforehand. So for me to go to the Seahawks tailgate would have required me to drive from Conroe, Texas at 6 o'clock in the morning, which I did not have the energy to do. At the ripe old age of 29, I'm starting to make those kind of decisions. Yeah. Anyway, the Seattle Seahawks took on the Houston Texans, and it was competitive for about 2 quarters because that's kind of how it's been for the Texans. Their defense has really been doing their thing. And, sorry, I'm still recovering from bronchitis. The Texans defense has really been doing their thing. But then eventually the floodgates open up, and it seems like as the season goes on, the amount of time that they're able to keep the game relatively competitive is smaller and smaller. That happens, like we mentioned before. The nuke is from this week's nuke player is from the this game that we're just talking about right now with the Seahawks and the Texans. Rashad Penny went out there and did his thing, but the Texans, bright spot, Davis Mills, with the rookie record for most consecutive completions. Yeah. Speaking of other sad scores, the Raiders, after their warm-up, decided they were going to have a conversation on top of the Chiefs logo, and the Chiefs didn't like that. And then they proceeded to break off their John Hine part. Oh, wait. Break their foot off in your John Hine parts. From Remember the Titans, right? That's the phrase that Denzel Washington uses. Anyway, the final score is 48-9, and the Raiders' season, as we all suspected, is sunk. So, yeah, no plundering this year for the Raiders. That's all the pirate jokes I got. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, the Chiefs 48-9. Looks like the Chiefs know how to play football again, which is great for them. Also, this is a divisional matchup, which is really important because they're playing a huge divisional game versus the Chargers, which, by the way, looks like either one of those teams is probably going to end up being a wild card team. But you always want to be the divisional winner when it's all said and done, because the wild card teams get like the worst possible scenario in the first round of the playoffs and the second round of the playoffs. But and then the third round too, if like some massive upset doesn't happen, you end up like playing on the road at some other really good team's building in adverse weather, which, you know, the Chiefs, it snows there and stuff like that, but they're used to their own environment. Anyway, funny part out of this one, like I said before, the funny part was like the Raiders celebrated on the Raiders were having their team meeting on top of the Chiefs logo, kind of thinking they were cool, hot shit, and all that kind of stuff like that. And then it turns out the Raiders team that played against the Washington football team and struggled to score multiple touchdowns also showed up in Kansas City and struggled to score multiple touchdowns. 9 points to the Chiefs 48. That's all I got. The Saints played the Jets. The final score was 30-9. Alvin Kamara's back. Everybody likes that, right? Like, that's the positive out of that. Yeah, so I'm just going to move on, right? We're cool. We're all cool if I just move on from that, right? The Saints defense, which, by the way, regardless of this win, it looks like the Saints are firmly have a grip on best defense that is not going to make the playoffs this year. So that's real tough, especially considering the Saints have an absolutely horrendous salary cap situation going on. So I'm sure they're going to really enjoy that, trying to sort that out this upcoming summer, especially considering they gave extensions to like multiple players. So now they're going to have to tell a bunch of really good defensive players that they're not good enough to be on the team anymore. They don't have money for them. And also, many could argue, based off of what happened with Jameis at the beginning of the season, they're still in the business of trying to find a quarterback. So as things are going horribly wrong, they don't have any money. Their defense is probably going to get broken up this upcoming offseason, and they don't have a quarterback. So for as good as things look today, Saints fans, don't worry. The bad times are right around the corner, and I think they know that. Anyway, Falcons 29, Panthers 21. Crazy part about this game, as we all suspected, it's a team with the losing record, so the Falcons roughshod them, right? The Falcons' defense played so good in this game that the Panthers pulled Cam Newton, put P.J. Walker in, pulled P.J. Walker, and put Cam Newton back in. Don't forget, 2 weeks ago, they fired Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, who couldn't find a way to get Sam Darnold to be an elite quarterback. Who would have thought? Anyway, also no Christian McCaffrey, so not a lot of mystery to their offense. Turns out that that's a problem. Who would have thought? You lose two of your, you lose a pretty good player. Also, are they planning on like Sam Darnold's season isn't done? I'm pretty sure he's like on one of those like I have a 10-week long injury, which I'm sure is going to be a really fun decision for them to have to make when he comes back. Anyway, Falcons beat the Panthers 29-21. That's a divisional matchup for the Falcons, which for some reason I reiterate once again, Matt Ryan, I don't think you understand the assignment. Or maybe you understand the assignment better than I do. The Falcons are not in the business of winning. Arthur Smith, going to get to keep his job until next year because he is drastically overachieved in a lot of facets, according to a lot of people. As soon as they get some more talent out there, and when I say talent, I mean on the defensive side of the ball, and when I say defensive side of the ball, I mean in the secondary and for the linebacker positions. It would be nice to have like elite level pass rushers, but we'll see what happens. Anyway. Other games that went on in this one, Browns versus Ravens. This is the one that I was actually really looking forward to, so I actually have a ton to say about this one. The big story out of this one, obviously, is Lamar Jackson not finishing this game. If you didn't see it, Lamar Jackson was in the process of scrambling. He threw the ball away, and I can't remember which defensive lineman. Maybe, was it Myles Garrett? It may have been Jadeveon Clowney. Anyway, one big motherfucker for the Browns fell onto the back of both of his ankles, somehow twisting both of them. But he is apparently going to be good for this upcoming week. Travis Huntley came out there, actually did a pretty decent job for a guy who's supposed to be a backup quarterback, and in particular, a backup quarterback that like not a lot of people have a lot of information on. But anyway. The Browns got up at 1 point, 17-0 in this game. That was with Lamar Jackson in the game, by the way. And at halftime, the Ravens had 1 first down. So, yeah, the Ravens had, I think it was 3 points and 1 first down by the time halftime rolled around in this one. So it looked like the route was on. And as the AFC North likes to do very violently, things change quickly and life comes at you fast. If there's one lesson that the AFC North can teach you kids, it's that life comes at you fast. The Browns scored a touchdown with 14:20 left in the second quarter, which if you're familiar with the length of NFL quarters, they're 15 minutes. So 40 seconds into the second quarter, because they were already in the red zone, the Browns scored a touchdown. They would proceed to not score another touchdown in this game from that point on. Basically at the top of, they basically scored all of their touchdowns in the first quarter and then did not score another one. Straight up. So you tell me if you think that's a really good win. 24-22 was the final score in this one. We'll break down some other stuff that happened in this one. It was a little weird. I will point out that one of the two drives that they scored a touchdown, or one of the three drives they scored a touchdown on, was basically all penalty yardage that was kind of off some very suspect pass interference calls. So, which, by the way, was the resounding theme of the entire weekend. We saw that happen on Sunday Night Football. We saw it happen on Monday Night Football. Fun times. Nonetheless, we move on. I digress. We move on. A lot of really sketchy PI calls this entire weekend. I'm not going to lie to you. It was actually really disappointing that we're this late in the season and people are pretending that pass interferences. Literally, if you touch the wide receiver while the ball is in the air. That resulted in back-to-back touchdowns for the Browns, and then they followed it up by getting a near interception. It was dropped. But nonetheless, I move on. The second half, much like Thursday Night Football, the script completely flipped. Somehow the Browns defense went next level. They forced multiple turnovers. They even scored a touchdown in this game for the Browns offense, which means the Browns offense scored 14 points. I just want to point that out. Remember we talked about how they didn't score. They scored at the top of the second quarter, and then they did not score another touchdown. One of the three touchdowns they scored was by the defense, so the offense scored two. The Browns offense took off the second half, as they have a lot of times this season, and then the defense carried them. They did. The defense carried them. They proceeded to have one viable drive, and it resulted in a missed field goal, a 46-yard missed field goal, and that was the Browns' offense for basically the entire second half. The Ravens' run defense was on point the entire game. Nick Chubb, basically every time he tried to cut back at any point, there was like three defensive linemen for the Ravens to meet him there. And, shame on him for being that fast that three defensive linemen were behind him while he was running. Baker Mayfield had, let me do the math here. Actually, I already did the math, but I'll share it with you. So Baker Mayfield had these things. He had a 34-yard pass completion, a 27-yard pass completion, a 12-yard pass completion, a 13-yard pass completed to Donovan Pineapple Peoples-Jones, right? He made 5 passes that were over in the entire game, the entirety of the game, that were over 10 yards. Out of 32 pass attempts, he had 5 that went beyond the 10-yard line. And I will say went beyond because air yards matter, right? Most of these extra long passes or whatever that we're talking about here, a lot of yak yards on those. One of those was a Rashad Bateman touchdown that I'm pretty sure more than half of the yards were air yards. This 34-yard touchdown pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones was let's see. He caught it. Yeah, no, he did not catch it in the end zone. He ran it in from like 20 yards out. Anyway, just want to point that out. Baker Mayfield obviously still hurt. Baker Mayfield still obviously kind of playing the dink and dunk game, and it worked out for him in this game versus a really high quality defense. It's facts. Somehow the Ravens lost one of their best defensive backs, and they're still not just giving up tons and tons of touchdowns. It's ridiculous. Tyler Huntley, like I said before, shout out to him. This is the second or third time he's had to come out this season, because there was a time where Lamar Jackson was sick and Tyler Huntley had to start that game. They ended up winning that one. And then there was another time where he got hurt in the game. He had to come in and play. Anyway, he made like a handful of really high quality plays, and I thought that was really good for a backup quarterback. Side note in this one, Rashad Bateman has joined the NFL, ladies and gentlemen. He has been slowly building up to like a big game, and it finally happened for him. He had a season high in receptions and a season high in receiving yards. I will point out the touchdown that he caught, or the pass that he caught that was marked down at the 1 yard line. He 100% pushed the shit out of the defensive back that was defending him. So Apparently been watching this DeAndre Hopkins film, who, by the way, sad to say, been shut down for the season, or shut down for the regular season because the Cardinals clinched the playoff spot. The Ravens in the second half cooked up a game-winning drive, and then it was basically shut down by the Warden. Denzel Ward, put everybody back in their cells and shut the game down. He had a game-winning sack on that one, and like I said before, the Browns defense carried throughout the course of this game, but in particular, they dominated the second half, despite the fact that the Ravens scored 22 points in the second half. Haven't seen that kind of domination. It was actually really absurd, the high-quality play that they were playing with, that in comparison to the results that they got as a defense. Really, I saw a lot of amazing play across the board from the Browns defense. Clearly a top 5 defense in the NFL. And then the offense for the Ravens, for as much as they were hampered, they were making it happen. Mark Andrews had a couple of really, really high-quality catches. Like I said, Rashad Bateman had a killer game today. And I don't know, man. Both of these teams, like the Ravens, for as close as this game was, felt like they had more of a more positive ending to this because, quite frankly, the last couple of weeks they look really bad. And they've been winning a lot of close games, and that's because they got that moxie. And I say the moxie because the last 2 games, it's come down to the final play. And the final play has been with them with the ball in their hands on offense. And if that happens in the playoffs, you have to imagine it's going to go the Ravens' way more often than not. Call that a big win. That was a really interesting game. If you have a chance to go back and rewatch it, even if it's a chance to go back and rewatch the highlights, I would suggest you go do it. A lot of really good plays in that game made. The Chargers beat the Giants 37-21. The most amazing thing out of this game is the Giants scoring 21 points with Mike Glennon as a starting quarterback. The Chargers reminded everybody that they are very, very good at football in this one. They did all the things. They had the pass rush. They had the pressure. They had the killer passes down the field, and that's without one of their best wide receivers, Keenan Allen. They had the run game going, and Justin Herbert looked like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. No surprise there. The Broncos played the Lions, allegedly. 38-10 was the final score. Really surprised the Lions got 10 points in this game. Really, this looked like a setup for a shutout. Also, shout out Teddy Bridgewater for continuing to defy the odds. That's all I really got in this one. The other big game that came out of this weekend, the 49ers played the Bengals. Final score in this one was 26-23 in overtime. Yes, in overtime, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it was that interesting of a game, by the way, going on overtime at the same time that the Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers game was going on in overtime. I had one on my phone and one on the TV, so it's a little rough. I even had one of those really iconic boyfriend moments. My girlfriend asked me to take the trash out, and then both of the games went in overtime, and then she came back like 15 minutes later, and I had not taken the trash out, and she kind of was like, I asked you to take the trash out? And I was like, yep. But like football. It was one of those like brain dead moments for me. Anyway, I did eventually take the trash out. I had to watch one of the overtimes on my phone. Anyway, the 49ers have a top three defense in the NFL. They got to be top 3 in terms of hotness right now. They've won ever since that game where they had the freak turnovers they had multiple wide receiver fumbles in the course of a singular football game versus the Arizona Cardinals with Colt McCoy at the quarterback position. And a lot of people, if you didn't watch that game, you wouldn't understand like how that game came to be. They got in a hole so quick that they had to fight out of it the entire game. And once again, that's a big weakness for the 49ers. They're not a team they're a front running team. That's just facts. They are a front-running team, and it showed itself in this game because there's a lot of moments where the Bengals got so close to taking the lead away from the 49ers, but they never really were able to get over that hump. A lot of it dealing with, of course, the elite level of their defense, but for the most part, their offense looked terrible their first 4 drives in this game. They spent a lot of time, and once again, they have a really tenuous running back situation. Elijah Mitchell has been hurt week in and week out. Plus, with Jeff Wilson Jr., he came in, and of course, that's a different type of running back that was behind the offensive line. They have not used Trey Sermon at all this year, which is interesting because they used a draft pick on him. You would imagine you would try and see if your draft picks are worth keeping around. But hey, I'm not Kyle Shanahan. He's an offensive genius. I'm not. I will point this out. They look like a totally different team. They look like a different team from another universe with George Kittle out there. He has missed 3 games this season, and he has still 757 yards and 6 touchdowns.
he is going to get a 1,000-yard receiving season again at the tight end position because Jimmy Garoppolo, anytime there is a problem, he just throws the ball to George Kittle and lets him solve it. Anyway, he's like, that's not my problem anymore. Here, you have it. I will point this out. Did the numbers on this. 50% of George Kittle's yards are yak. They're yards after the catch. So shout out Jimmy. You may be picking up those air yards a little bit, but I see you, boy. I see you out there, still out there scamming, huh? Anyway, he has the yak yards, and honestly, George Kittle has somehow found a way to outshine Deebo Samuels, who has proven that he is capable of being a running back and wide receiver. And I will point this out. You want to talk about a team that looks so unique in the way that they play football overall. The San Francisco 49ers specialize in finding people who make plays. Brandon Ayuk, playmaker. If you watch the way that he plays football, this guy's he's quick in small spaces, and he has the long speed to go along with it. Deebo Samuels, running back / wide receiver, legitimately can play either one of those positions. George Kittle, tight end that also doubles as a wide receiver, also doubles as a wide receiver, essentially. A 6'4" wide receiver, gets a ton of yak yards. Guys that go up the middle. You talk about when Raheem Mostert is 100% healthy, really good receiving running back. You talk about Elijah Mitchell, pretty decent receiving running back. They don't have like people who specialize in one position. They have playmakers. And a lot of teams in the NFL really are clamoring for guys like that, and somehow the 49ers have a system for identifying them. I don't know what it is, but you can't tell me it's a coincidence that they just so happen to get Raheem Mostert, and then two running backs who are basically carbon copies of him in Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson Jr., right? You can't tell me that it's a coincidence that they got a guy like George Kittle. You can't tell me it's a coincidence that they get two wide receivers who basically are clones of each other in Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk. I don't understand Brandon Ayuk's like running back game isn't the caliber that Deebo Samuels is, but they are guys who make plays in space against defenders and do it aggressively, like up the field. So, yeah, there's that's always going to pay off. That's going to pay big dividends in the long run, and I feel like the 49ers are a team that is malleable. Like, they can morph into whatever they need to win a lot of games. And it takes a lot of pressure off Jimmy Garoppolo, who, honestly, we can sit here and talk about how, like, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't throw the ball down the field. When you got guys like Deebo, when you got guys like Brandon, you got guys like George, sometimes you got to let the big dogs eat. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what they've been doing a lot this season. So this game is really, and of course they run shorter routes than pretty much everybody else in the NFL. This game really had a ton of action, despite the fact that the final score was only 26-23. Jamar Chase had a near top 5 touchdown catch in the course of this game. If you didn't see it online or anything like that, you got to go back and rewatch this game. He had a Moss type catch that he actually dropped when he made contact with the ground, but it looked really beautiful. And then 2 plays later, when the Bengals were trying to drive again, one of the wide receivers, I want to say it was T. Higgins. T. Higgins had a ball deflect off of his hands, and it deflected straight into the hands of Jamar Chase. Playmakers make plays, right? Also, later on in this game, Jamar Chase had 2 receiving touchdowns. No big deal for the comeback. Like back-to-back touchdown catches. Sorry, you guys can hear the struggle going on over here. This game overall was almost defined heavily by turnovers that weren't even offensive turnovers. Really weird, like kind of very similar in the same vein of the 49ers when they played against the Cardinals. The Bengals had 2, and really they had 4 muffs. Yeah, they had 4 people. No. They had 3 muffed punts and 1 muffed kickoff in the course of this game. 2 of them turned into turnovers. So the opening drive for the 49ers, the second drive for the 49ers, they punted it away, and then the punt returner for the Bengals muffed it, and then the 49ers recovered it almost inside of Bengals territory, and that set up one of their touchdowns. That is, freak incident type stuff that makes you question, like, hey, if the 49ers weren't able to drive the ball down the field in the first half, the second half, what makes you think like they actually were the team that actually won out in this game when it was all said and done? But you got to play what happens in the game, right? Like, we don't play what ifs when it's all said and done. The win goes to the 49ers. The information about how good the Bengals, you take things like 2 special teams turnovers into account especially since they are anomalies. Like, they're not things that frequently happen at all. They are anomalies. You take those into account in terms of your understanding of what the Bengals are capable of. Because this game very easily could have been won by the Bengals. They take away one of, like we talked about with the Seahawks, right? When they played the 49ers last week, Gerald Everett doesn't turn the ball over 3 times in the course of a game, the Seahawks run away with that one. And that's something to be said about you take away one of these special teams turnovers, and who knows what kind of football game you're talking about. We don't live in the world where you take away turnovers and you get points out of it, right? But to say that those 2 things did not help the 49ers in this game drastically come up with big plays is a massive understatement. Also, apparently the 49ers are the hardest hitting team in the NFL, because I don't know if it was because of the location of the parabolic mics, but I haven't heard pads clack like that all season. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should go watch the game. Joe Burrow was under heavy pressure vast majority of this game. He ended up getting sacked 5 times. Same thing with Jimmy G. Jimmy G got sacked 5 times, and I think 4 of them were in the second half. Case in point, in this game, the 49ers scored 3 points in the second half, and they had 3 third-down sacks. 4 of their 5 sacks were in the second half of this game, and it was complete domination of the 49ers defense. Like, the Bengals defense went out there and did their job versus the 49ers in the second half. And really, you could argue throughout the course of the game, because they gave 2 of their possessions back to the 49ers and only gave up 26 points. And me personally, I consider 28 points to be the sign of indicative of a really good offense, because it's 4 touchdowns, 4 quarters. Maybe I'm a simpleton like that, but that's like my identifying marker. But nonetheless, you take 2 possessions away from a team and you come out with 26 points. Coming up a little, I mean, I'm supposed to have some change. You know what I mean? You pocketed my change and walked away with it. Case in point, like I said before, the Bengals defense went out there and they did their thing, baby. And you know, that's really impressive, because they've been impressive defensively at times throughout the course of this year. They've had moments, and I said this about when I wrote it up for my notes and everything like this. The Bengals have had moments where they've looked like one of the best teams in the NFL, and they've had a lot of games where they have not. They've had a lot of games. We can go back to the fact that Evan McPherson has 3 game-winning field goals this season. And Robbie Gould, if it wasn't for Robbie Gould slightly missing in a windy stadium versus the Bengals, this game doesn't go into overtime. Right, because the 49ers had the game-winning drive in this one. Like I said before, Jamar Chase had a killer game. He had 77 receiving yards, and more than half of those receiving yards were from the touchdown catches that he had in the second half. T. Higgins, baby, went out here, emerged, had a career day in terms of receiving yards, and then apparently he knows how to absolutely murder zone defenses, because that's what he did all day. Anyway, he went out there and killed him. And like I said before, the Bengals were able to force overtime, but on their opening drive, they were only able to get a field goal. And Jimmy Garoppolo got, once again, playmaking type stuff, got the pass, got the ball to George Kittle multiple times. And then the final death blow in this situation was a pass to Brandon Ayuk down the sideline. He runs and he jumps from like 5 yards out and is able to land inside or over the pylon to get the game-winning touchdown. And the Bengals fans go home sad. So there's that. I think I need to take a hydration break here real quick to clear my throat, and then we can move on with some other stuff. We'll be right back right here on the Broke Boy Sports Podcast.
All right, my bad. Totally spaced out on that one. Anyway, back to the NFL action. Oh, we might finish under an hour, guys. Let's get it. Ooh, man. Let's get it. So we got 3 games left here. As you can tell, the break definitely didn't help with the fact that my bronchitis is kicking my ass a little bit here. Buccaneers Bills. This was actually really interesting. Sorry. Vast majority of this game, the Buccaneers had the lead, and the Bills really looked like the offense that lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple of weeks ago, which, by the way, seems like an eternity ago, but really, I think it was like a month ago. That Bills offense has continued to show up for some reason, and I have a strange feeling that a lot of it does not have to do with solely with Josh Allen. And I think more of it has to do with the deeper blanket coverage that's being thrown in terms of zone further down the field, because a lot of their offense has to do with their the connection between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and the same thing with Emmanuel Sanders. They've also been struggling heavily at the running game position. Zach Moss is out for the entire season, right? And they've really been struggling in terms of getting that variety and really getting like any type of rush game going in general. And it makes them one-dimensional, which of course is the perfect time for that to happen, right? So like I said before, the first portion of this game, so they were down 23-3 at halftime, right? And then they scored 23 points in the third and the fourth quarter. They scored 17 of those points in the fourth. And if you watch the game, it was actually really interesting because it was basically like the Buccaneers offense completely shut off in the second half, which, by the way, the defense for the Buccaneers has been on point. The defense for the Bills has been on point all season, even with the offense been struggling overall. But nonetheless, they went out there and they did the thing. They really did. But yeah, Buffalo got 173 rushing yards out of this game in total. Vast majority of those coming from their quarterback. So they got 173 rushing yards. 109 of them came from Josh Allen. That's an indicator of a bigger problem further down the field in terms of being able to get those bomb passes that we've seen them get the last 2 years, really, of the entire season. And it's really been a struggle in particular for like Stephon Diggs. He's had moments where he's really shined and he's looked like Stephon Diggs like we've all been accustomed to and stuff like that. But you look at this game, he had 74 yards receiving. He got targeted 13 different times and he only got 7 of those catches. And vast majority of them, if you go back and watch it, it's because he's getting thrown to in like a really tight window. And I get it. It's the NFL. Though all the windows are going to be really tight. But some of it is very clearly a deeper understanding of what the Bills do to operate as an offense deeper down the field. And that's saying a lot, considering that we all kind of have this prevailing thought that the Buccaneers secondary, not great, right? Like not spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. And they really did a number on the Bills basically the first 3 quarters of this game. And the fourth quarter, they got just a glimmer of hope, and they were able to see. That's the problem, right? Like, there's 4 quarters in the game, 3 of it they spent struggling, and then the fourth one they look like the team that could win the Super Bowl and bring the glory back to Buffalo, New York, right? And of course, they end up losing in this one because guess what? Like, Tom Brady's one of the most clutchest dudes on the face of the planet when it comes to football. That's just how it goes. But nonetheless, also Rashad Perriman catching a 58-yard touchdown pass from Tom Brady after I think there was 2 broken tackles on that one play, and one was just like a safety coming from the opposite side of the field with the inability to stop Rashad Perriman from being able to score a touchdown. It happens. It really does. But yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough for like the last month and a half. Really, ever since that Jaguars loss, the Bills have not looked like a playoff caliber team, despite the fact that they've been playing some of the tougher teams in the NFL. They've really been able to hang with them, but I don't think anybody's really out here kind of leaning on the fact that the Buccaneers are going to be, other than the fact that they have Tom Brady on their team. If they literally had any other quarterback, you would say like that's a playoff caliber team, but you wouldn't think that they're a Super Bowl contender. But you add Tom Brady in and they're immediately a Super Bowl contender, right? So that kind of gives you perspective in terms of where the Bills are at, because it seems like we saw what happened versus the Patriots, right? They came up 1 drive short of being able to win that one. We saw what happened versus the Buccaneers. They came up 1 drive short of being able to beat them. It's like they're playing up and down to their competition, which is tough to see as a fan, and then and it's really tough to be a part of as a team. Tell me what you think on Twitter at FB_playbook. That's my Twitter handle. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of the way that I see it to a certain degree, man. It's really rough to see a team play up and down the competition, especially considering you know that your defense has been holding down their end of the bargain, and the offense has really been doing everything in their power to make it as difficult as possible for the defense. This is how it is. It's really that's what's been happening in the last month. The defense has been doing their job. The offense has really not been holding up their end of the bargain. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, in an expected result, but not in the way that you expected it to happen, the Packers beat the Bears 45-30. In Lambeau. There was a lot of moments where Justin Fields looked just flat out like a rookie quarterback. And I say rookie quarterback in place of saying if he's like 3 years removed from getting drafted, he looked like he looked on Sunday Night Football, you would say that he's just a bad quarterback and shouldn't be a starter in the NFL, which some people are saying now as he is less than 12 games into his NFL career. Interesting. And then on the Chicago Bears, where people objectively believe that Matt Nagy is not a good football coach or not a good coach for the Chicago Bears, right? A lot of people assuming he's going to get fired, including Matt Nagy at this point. Matt Nagy has to be assuming he's getting fired, right? I mean, he has to. Anyway, the Packers in this matchup, if you didn't see it, there were multiple special teams turnovers in this one, and one of them was there was a situation where a punt deflected into the arms of a Bears gunner. He scooped it up and ran it in for, well, it looked like he was going to run it in for a touchdown. But there was a lot of moments where the Bears had points come from places that they did not expect it to. The defense was high quality throughout the course of this game, despite what the score says. The most important thing to pay attention to and realize what happened throughout the course of this game, you had to watch what happened in the first half, right? The Bears defense really took it to the Packers offense. You can tell. At one point, this game was 10-0, right? Sorry, really, once again, like super sorry about all the coughing. But your boy's dying over here. I'm kidding. It's just bronchitis and it's like phlegm and stuff like that. But Jakeem Grant had a 97-yard punt return on this one. He also had another touchdown, a 46-yard pass from Justin Fields on an end around. I don't get how he got credit for a pass on that one. It was a push pass, right? There's a little tap pass in front of him. But yeah, Jakeem Grant, who, if you don't know his story, all-time leader in receiving yards at Texas Tech, was a big star for the show Undrafted, which was an NFL Network show that I have no idea why they stopped doing. But nonetheless, Jakeem Grant is like the biggest dude on that show to make it out and get to the NFL. Originally was with the Miami Dolphins, was their punt returner, but in this game blew up and made it happen. And even afterwards on the Pat McAfee show, Aaron Rodgers made it a point to go out and be like, hey, look, if there's a couple people you want to pay to go and watch play football, it is Jakeem Grant, because you never know what's going to happen when he touches the ball. And he has an immense amount of confidence that apparently Aaron Rodgers respects. So, take that however you want to. But the fact of the matter is that the Bears had 14, what is it? Yeah. The Bears had 24 points at halftime, and they finished the game with 30. Tells you all you need to know, right? The Bears defense, the Packers defense, and really the Packers as a team, once again, you've seen them get all kinds of challenges and adversity thrown at them throughout the course of the season, and they've answered in different ways. There was times where Aaron Rodgers wasn't available to play. The defense stepped up and played like a top 5, maybe the number 1 defense in the NFL, if you want to really make it a legitimate argument. They've had massive amounts of injuries, not only at the cornerback position, but on top of that, at the defensive line position. Their D-line has been thin because they're waiting on Zadarius Smith to come back. We saw the transition from Kevin King to Eric Stokes, right? And Eric Stokes has looked like he's just a plug-and-play safety in the NFL for one of the best defenses in the NFL. That's absurd to think about. A guy who plays safety who has corner-type speed, right? You see all kinds of ways that they answer the bell. Aaron Jones didn't really get a ton of carries in the course of this game, although still somehow snuck away and got 2 touchdowns on back-to-back drives on this one. You'll have to explain that one to me at some point. But A.J. Dillon carried the ball most of this game, and it's very clear because Aaron Jones is still coming back and recovering from an injury. That's why he got all those carries. Like A.J. Dillon got 15 carries. Aaron Jones got 5 and was able to turn one of them into a touchdown, and he got a receiving touchdown later on in the game because Aaron Rodgers throws dimes, right? And when you see a team that gets all these different ways that they can possibly lose thrown at them and they still come out and find a win, it's hard to not make an argument for how that's not the front runner for the Super Bowl, right? A lot of people have been seeing it from the beginning of the season till now, and it's hard to make an argument that that's not the case. It's hard to look at that team, and I get it, it's the Chicago Bears, it's a divisional matchup, and somehow giving up 30 points, I will point out, like we mentioned before, 2 of them were special teams touchdowns. They even got an onside kick recovery in one of these situations. And they even got an onside kick recovery for another offensive drive, and they were still able to stop them. But nonetheless, that 30 points is kind of a falsetto 30 points, right? Because like half of it came off of special teams, and then one of them was off of a really, really amazing play from Jakeem Grant. It wasn't like a coherent drive from the Chicago Bears. But there's nothing you can say other than the Green Bay Packers are a legitimate threat to win this Super Bowl, man. And if the NFC Championship game comes down to them and the Cardinals, I can't wait to see that. I really can't. There's a lot of what the Packers are doing is some of the same stuff that the Cardinals are doing. Speaking of the Cardinals, it's time for me to tell that story that I mentioned to the people who were only looking at the stream when we first started. By the way, if you don't know, the way that we start the show is we start the stream up and then we start the podcast. So if you really want to ask me like literally anything, ask me in the pre-shows type stuff, and I will answer it. But nonetheless, the Cardinals and the Cardinals and the Rams in this one. By the way, did I tell you guys when it came to the money line stuff? When it came to picking straight up in my pick'em league or whatever, I only got one wrong, and it was the Buccaneers Bills. Sorry, probably should have mentioned that. If you listened to last week's show, you would have had winners. But the Rams, 30-23 was the final score in this one when it was all said and done. And the Cardinals situation is interesting because now we're post ankle injury for the second time with Kyler Murray, and now we have to wonder. Is it going to be shades of what we saw last season when this happened? Him coming back from the ankle injury and then struggling in the Cardinals season that was on a very high trajectory, just completely have the bottom fall out of it. There's only 4 weeks left, so there's not much room to crash and burn, right? But nonetheless, that has to be something you're thinking about, especially considering DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be available for the rest of the regular season. It's going to be an opportunity for Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, and AJ Green, who has been amazing in this portion of the season, and Zach Ertz, who's looked really good at the tight end position after they lost Max Williams. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. This loss is a product of how good the Rams can be when they play at their absolute best, because their pressure was relentless versus Kyler Murray. If you get that Rams defense every single week, you can't stop them. That's the Super Bowl champion, right? You get that kind of pass offense. You get that kind of running game because, once again, Darrell Henderson Jr. out because of an injury. And then they also who was their other running back that they lost? Oh, no, Cam Akers was out. Darrell Henderson Jr. was out because of COVID reasons. Sony Michel steps in, looks like the number one running back, right? Gets high production stuff that you like to see. He got high production stuff like he did 3 years ago when he led the Patriots. He carried the Patriots to the Super Bowl versus the Rams. And he's getting that with the Rams, who also have the pass offense to go along with it. And for your team to be able to be like, we can pick and choose which running back we want to put in the backfield, and we're still going to get good things to happen for us. This is a team that has an embarrassment of riches on both sides of the ball because the defenses were looking on point throughout the course of this game. There were a couple of key penalties that I felt really decided some of these drives for the offensive side of the ball, and of course they were PI. It was really tough to sit back and be like, I guess that's pass interference. There's a lot of you could have let that go, but you decided not to, and really nobody's going to argue against you on that because that's kind of how the game goes, right? If you err on the side of caution, and the side of caution is throwing the flag. The Rams looked that's the best Rams team we've seen in like 2 months, right? That was the best Rams team we've seen in 2 months, and it was versus a divisional opponent that just so happens to also be one of the best teams in the NFL. So take that how you will. And it's once again an indicator of how deadly the NFC West is. The NFC West has got to be like the best division in football at this point with the way that all these teams are winning. And sad to say, my Seattle Seahawks are looking like the worst team in the best division in football. But nonetheless, when you got Russell Wilson on your team, DK Metcalf, Bobby Wagner, guys like that, Carlos Dunlap, who finally got his first sack this season or 2 weeks ago versus Jimmy Garoppolo, kind of stuff like that. But a key matchup like this, a key win like this is going to carry the Rams potentially to winning the NFC West. And I think that we can all say, one, that game was heavily decided beforehand. The final score was 30-23, but the Rams had it. Like, they had that game in control, and it came down to the Cardinals coming back in the second half of it because of some great defense that they have been playing, which, honestly, the Cardinals have looked like a top 10, top 5 defense multiple times throughout the course of this year. And in particular, when Kyler was out, they looked like their best defensive form we had seen from them all season. But the Rams were on point. Their pass rush was all over the place. Floyd was killing it. And then Aaron Donald finished that game off. The game-winning sack was just the cherry literally on top of a perfect cake from the Rams front seven overall. That's all I got on that one, and I think that's all we got here. Other stuff while I fade us out here towards the end of the show. Other stuff for divisional matchups. Not divisional matchups, but divisional leaders. The Patriots are currently leading the AFC East. They have they're 9-4. The Bills are 7-6. The Ravens currently 1 game ahead of the Browns, Bengals, and technically 1.5 games ahead of the Steelers. So it's a week by week basis in the AFC North, which is not a surprise. The Titans, for as much as they were running away with the regular season, the Colts are only 2 games behind them. Divisional games are a really big problem, but the trench between the Titans and Colts is the Titans, Colts, and the Texans and Jaguars is massive. The AFC West, the Chargers and the Chiefs play each other this upcoming Sunday. There's a 1-game difference between them. If the Chargers win, they tie it up at the top of the AFC West, and they have one of the better records in the NFL. They get 1 step closer to a double-digit win season and a return to the playoffs for what seems like a decade. NFC East, the Cowboys still have a 3-game lead over pretty much everybody. So once again, NFC Beast probably not going to have a wild card team coming out of it, but it is a little disappointing to see how well the Eagles have played in the latter half of the season, and Washington still be tied with them record-wise, and I think that has a lot to do with opponents they're playing, right? The NFC North, the Packers up by 4 on everybody game-wise. It's tough. The Vikings only have 6 wins on the season. They are 1 game away from 500 and 2 games away from two wins away from a winning record. So yeah, and the Lions are 1-11-1. NFC South, the Buccaneers are up by 4 games on everybody. The Falcons are the second best team in the NFC South. Who would have thought? After all the drama that we've been through with the Buccaneers, the Falcons, and the Saints and the Panthers the last couple of years, that this would be the year that they run away with the division. And finally, the NFC West, the Cardinals 10-2 on the season, the Rams just 2 games behind them. Everybody else, the 49ers 3 games behind, and the Seahawks 5 games behind. And you can finally stop listening to my phlegm-filled, raspy voice as we call it a night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to the recap episode of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Follow me on Twitter, FB_Playbook, and all the other places. Later.